Well, welcome. Welcome. Good of you to stop by. Welcome to the Beards and Bible podcast. Nice of you to stop by and join us.
Thank you.
I'm Josh. I'm joined as always by my good friend Gabe Rutledge. Gabe, how you doing, man?
Doing great. My family has walked through quite the illness this past week. We have just all been taking turns. Really, the past week and a half, something just completely thrashed us. And I was, we're all just down for the count for a couple of days, but we're doing much better now. We're all in the mend.
Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that you weren't feeling well. I'm happy to hear that you're feeling better. Did you guys get any of this crazy weather? Any snow, any ice, anything crazy like that?
No, we just got the cold. Yeah, I saw you guys had snow. That was cool. I'm jealous.
No, it wasn't. I mean, it was, but it wasn't. Like, we had 2 days where it was like, isn't this cool, kids? And then last Wednesday, it was -8 as I woke up in the morning.
That's insane.
I live in Tennessee.
Yeah, you're like 6 hours north of me. That's crazy.
It should not be this way. I don't live in South Dakota. I don't live in Canada. I live in Tennessee. And it's for good reason, because I don't want to wake up and drive to work when it's -8. So
I have never been sub-zero temperatures. I don't think I've ever been anything below like 15 degrees Fahrenheit.
You know, it's an interesting thing. I think what was so interesting is like you'd be outside and you'd take a deep breath in through your nose and you could feel your snot freezing. That's a new phenomena. So
I don't know. Is that a good thing or bad thing? I wonder how that would feel.
It's just weird. To all our listeners in Canada right now, you guys are probably enjoying this because here we are, a bunch of Yanks talking about how cold weather is not conducive. But yeah, we survived. I was a little bit cabin fever-y, if that's a word, by day 3.
Yeah, that's definitely a word.
Yeah, cabin fever-y, cabin feverish.
Yeah.
So we got to come in and out. My truck has 4-wheel drive, so my wife and I were able to swap shifts in the truck. She had some patients she had to go see, and so yeah, it was good. But
little humble brag there with your 4-wheel drive pickup.
Yeah, well, I mean, no big deal. It's a 4-wheel drive F-150.
Merca.
Yeah.
No, I'd be terrified to think of Southern Alabamians driving with those kinds of conditions, snow on the ground. It'd be an apocalypse.
It kind of is that way here. Like,
yeah,
we still have road closures here a week after the storm because we got this heavy snowstorm that hit us Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and then we had sub-zero temps and temperatures in the single digits and low teens all week. So nothing really melted. It just froze. And so there was just like sheets of ice that were like 6 inches thick on all the roads. And a lot of people just didn't leave their house. Some people that tried to leave their house ended up stuck on the side of the road. But fortunately,
did you guys eat some bread and soups and sit
Get
around
all
and get fat and sassy?
Here's the worst part about it. It's not bad. I mean, it's good. It's not bad. So every year as a church, we do a 40-day fast, which is great. Praise the Lord. Fasting and praying together as a church family. I'm all about that. It just so happens the first 10 days of this 40-day fast, most of us give up sweets and meats and all things secular media. So when you're snowed in, and all you can watch is like The Chosen and Touched by an Angel. That's a fast track for, it just made it more difficult. I'm nothing against The Chosen and Touched by an Angel, but which, by the way, Touched by an Angel, I'm not calling secular media because,
Oh yeah, that's definitely theologically on the up and up. That's we make all of our new members watch the first season of Touched by an Angel just to get them acclimated into our belief and our core values,
Yes. Wow. Well, Gabe, today for our episode. Wait, do you hear that music?
Yeah.
What's that? What are we talking about today? Do you know? Oh. Oh my goodness. Could it be? Oh, look, it's Harrison Ford. Harrison, what are you doing here? Wait, we couldn't really get Harrison Ford in the studio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just had my boys sit down and rewatch. We watched the scene in Indiana Jones. Which one was it? Where the army tank scene where they're fighting on top of the army tank.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Was that Raiders of the Lost Ark?
That's Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's the first one. Yeah.
Oh, that was such a good scene.
Did you see the new one? Just came out.
No, not that just came out. I saw the one with the aliens, the one before this one, but I didn't see
The one that just came
one.
out, The Dial of Destiny. We watched that before our secular media fast, and it was
just kind of slipped it in there right before that.
Yeah, man, we were like trying to get through all these movies before it started, So just watch movies for a straight 6 days.
Very spiritual of you, yeah.
Ate all the junk food. No, it was okay. It was. I mean, if you like Indiana Jones, it's Indiana Jones, but it was campy, it was cheesy, but it was fun.
Okay.
Yeah. So today we're talking about the Ark of the Covenant. And the first Indiana Jones movie, if you've not seen it, is all about Indiana Jones trying to rescue the Ark, which is lost to antiquity from the Nazis, who are on a quest to capture all the sacred relics of the world because those Nazis are greedy. And I think renewed a lot of interest in this thing called the Ark of the Covenant from a lot of people. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. What was the Ark of the Covenant? What was it made of? What was inside of it? The spiritual significance of it. And really the age-old question, where did it go? Because Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark, in the end of that movie, you know where the Ark went. Remember?
Yeah, it went into a warehouse.
The CIA archives, yeah.
CIA archives, yeah.
So if it is in a warehouse in the CIA archives, our apologies, because I don't think we mentioned that theory today. So, so that's what we're going to talk about today. So, Gabe, you want to read Exodus 25, 10 through 22? This is the first mention that we have in the scriptures of the Ark, of God commanding the people of Israel to make an Ark, and then we'll kind of just talk about it.
Yeah, Exodus 25, 10 to 22. Have them make an ark of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, and 1.5 cubits high. Overlay it with pure gold, both inside and out, and make a gold molding around it. Cast 4 gold rings for it, and fasten them to its 4 feet, with 2 rings on one side and 2 rings on the other. Then make the poles of acacia wood and overlay them with gold. Insert the poles into the rings on the sides of the ark to carry it. The poles are to remain in the rings of this ark. They are not to be removed. Then put in the ark the tablets of the covenant law, which I will give you. Make an atonement cover of pure gold, 2.5 cubits long and 1.5 cubits wide, and make 2 cherubim out of hammered gold at the ends of the cover. Make 1 cherub on one end and the second cherub on the other. Make the cherubim of one piece with the cover at the 2 ends. The cherubim are to have their wings spread upward, overshadowing the cover with them. The cherubim are to face each other, looking toward the cover. Place the cover on top of the ark and put in the ark the tablets of the covenant law that I will give you. There, above the cover, between the 2 cherubim that are over the ark of the covenant law, I will meet with you and give you all the commands for the Israelites.
Very good. Very good. I'll give you about a B+ for that reading. Good job. Yeah. So it's the first mention in scripture we have of God telling the people of Israel to build an ark. So an ark was basically a box or a chest, if you prefer that word. And we just read the dimensions are 2.5 cubits in length. So cubit is about 18 inches. So, Gabe, you work construction, so that's what, 36? That's 42 inches? How many feet is 42 inches?
How many feet is 42 inches? Man, I have worked construction, therefore don't have to know math. It's just 40.
No, but if
42.
somebody's like,
Yeah,
hang on.
it's
Let's see.
3.5 feet. 3.5
3.5
feet.
feet. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So
wow. Didn't know I was going to get quizzed today. Goodness.
1.5 cubits in height. So that would be 24 inches, and 1.5 cubits in width. So again, 24 inches. So honestly, the Ark was probably a little bit smaller than what we see in Indiana Jones. Right?
Lies.
Because I mean, in Indiana Jones, it seems like the Ark is, 8 foot long, 3 foot wide. It's this massive thing.
Yeah.
And in reality, the Ark was probably a little bit smaller if we look at the dimensions biblically. But what essentially was the Ark? Why did God say to the people of Israel, build this Ark? And why was it so important to him?
Sounds like that's kind of like his throne, so to speak, on earth, like the meeting place where he would then dwell. Like it was such a sacred, holy place on earth once again, post the fall of man, where his presence could actually reside and communicate with the Israelites.
So that was in the holy place,
Mm-hmm.
in the tabernacle, and the only people that could go in the holy place was really one person, the high priest of Israel, right?
Mm-hmm.
Once a year on the Day of Atonement. And there at the Ark, it wasn't just this box with this elaborate gold stuff. In between the two cherub, that's where the glory of God would reside, that the priest would witness. Is that correct? Is that what we're kind of understanding the biblical text?
Yeah, yeah.
Which is a really interesting thing to think through. Like, it's not just a box, it's not just a chest. It is it's a place where God says, I'm going to meet with you here in this place. It's pretty fascinating, interesting to think through.
Yeah.
I know in the last episode you had talked about how the Shekinah glory, or the visible manifest presence of God, would lift from the holy place and be like a cloud and move. So just curious, when the Ark was was going into battle and things like that, was there any tangible representation of God's presence, or was it just a chest?
You're asking like when the Israelites would go into battle against their enemies as they're in the wilderness, would there be any, like, the Shekinah, would it rest on the Ark of the Covenant?
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that. It's a good question. And I don't think the Shekinah was covering or inhabiting the Ark of the Covenant as it was being transported at all. But rather they were following that Shekinah where it led them.
And then once they got there, then the Shekinah would come and rest on the Ark in between.
Once the Ark was reconstructed.
Okay.
There is this prayer that's prayed in synagogues. It's Numbers 10:35. When the Ark would travel, Moses would say, "Arise, O Lord, and let your enemies be scattered, and let them that hate you flee from before you." And so there's like this Aaronic prayer that's prayed by the priest. That when it was time to move, it was like, we're either going to go to war, or if people hate us and don't choose to go to war with us, may they flee from before you in your presence. So it does seem that there is this like visible, like the enemies of God would see this visible presence approaching. Yeah. So, but where it was in relation to the camp of Israel, I'm not sure.
There is it's in our show notes somewhere. We'll get to it here in a minute. But there's a Mishnah or a Midrash that talks about what the oral tradition was for what happened as the Ark moved and what was coming out of it. So I guess we'll get to that.
That'd be interesting. Yeah.
So what was it made of, and what was inside of it? So it was constructed out of this specific type of wood. And Gabe, how do you say that again? I've always said
acacia.
Acacia. Sometimes I say acacia, but acacia wood. So I don't know if there's any special significance of that, other than it was just a very special type of wood, perhaps. It was plated with pure gold, both on the inside and the out. And then, based on the description that we have in the book of Exodus that Gabe read, at the bottom of the box, there were 4 gold rings attached and through through those gold rings, 2 poles that were also made of acacia and coated in gold and were put. And it was only a certain family, and I guess we talked about this last episode, that was the only family that could carry the ark, and they would do so using these poles on their shoulders. So that was the family of Kehath.
Yeah, like Kohath or something.
Yeah.
The Kohathites.
Kohathites. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, some of the stuff from the show notes I got from a Jewish library website. So sometimes our Goy Bible reads a little different than the Hebrew transliteration. So covering the box was, and this is a Hebrew term. Again, I got this from a Jewish library. Say that word for me. Kaporet.
Kaporet. Yeah.
Kaporet.
Yeah, okay. It just means covering. This is like where we get the day Yom Kippur, the day of covering. The day it's like just a cover.
Okay. So 2.5 by 1.5 cubits. We talked about that. And then attached to the covering, or the kaporet, were 2 sculpted cherubs, also made of pure gold. Now, what is a cherub?
It's like a winged creature.
It's not a naked baby angel that shoots you with an arrow on Valentine's Day.
No, in fact, isn't the last time? Where was the last time we saw cherubim?
Well,
before this
would be in the Garden of Eden. Is that right?
Yeah. So I guess you got to think like God's commanding the people to build this box and put this creature, I guess a physical symbol of these creatures, which the last time we heard about that creature was back in the book of Genesis, where that was the last time God dwelt with us as humanity. So it's like there's supposed to be this visible reminder that we're going into a space now that is so holy that God can dwell there again. But there's still this risk factor involved with it, just like the cherubim are guarding the way to the garden because of our sin. It's like there's still this inhibition, to God's presence that is guarding this box.
Yeah, that's Genesis 3:24. We'll start in verse 23. The Lord God sent him away from the Garden of Eden to work the ground from which he was taken. He drove the man out and stationed the cherubim and the flaming, whirling sword east of the Garden of Eden to guard the way to the tree of life. So interesting. So between Genesis, the next time you see cherub or cherubim mentioned, is that when God says to build the ark?
Yeah. I think if I'm not mistaken.
Wow. Okay.
And there's all kinds of like garden imagery as you walk into the tabernacle. There would have been a tree, which was the menorah, like which symbol of like the tree of life. There would have been these different levels of the garden, its levels of holiness, and it would have been like you're walking back into the Garden of Eden in a sense, back into the presence again.
So interesting, huh?
Yeah.
So the contents of the ark has really been, debated through the centuries. Initially, what was to be placed in the ark, and that's what we read in the book of Exodus, is the 10 Commandments. The first tablets containing the 10 Commandments, the ones that were broken by Moses, and then the second tablets, which remained intact. And then the book of Hebrews also mentions what else would have been in the ark, and that would have been the gold jar of manna and Aaron's staff that budded. So rabbis will often debate and speculate, what was exactly in the ark. And I got in our show notes, according to one opinion in the Talmud, both tablets were together in the ark. According to another, there were 2 arks and each contained one set of tablets. It seems there's just one ark, but exactly if it was both tablets or just one, I don't know if we're explicitly told, but nonetheless, you had the tablets of the law, gold jar of manna, Aaron's staff that budded. They're inside the ark. So what was like, I mean, this just kind of seems to us in 2024 as Westerners when we think about, okay, so God wants to commune with his people again even though his people sinned, he still says, I want to meet with you. Like, why does he do it to an ark? Like, that's just kind of an odd
Hmm.
thing to use. So, like, what was the spiritual significance of an ark?
Hmm.
Like, why the ark? I
Yeah.
guess is a better way to ask it.
Yeah. Well, I think it just speaks, number one, to the strong desire God has to dwell with His people and be in the presence of His people. It's like when you package the ark with the tabernacle as a whole, it's like this. It's remembering the fall of humanity, but also it's a path of atonement and reconciliation through this like symbolic walk back into the garden. So that's kind of the spiritual significance of it. But it's like, um, and the reassurance that God is with us as a people as we are going through our wanderings.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, like the Day of Atonement is really big in
Hmm.
Jewish worship, and the ark would have played a pretty significant role in the Day of Atonement. Correct?
Right. Right. Yeah.
How would the ark have played into the Day of Atonement? What did the ark do on the Day of Atonement?
Um, so that was the one day that anyone could go into the Holy of Holies, like the high priest, and so he would sprinkle the blood of this goat, on the Ark of the Covenant. It was considered like the mercy seat, and so that
Hmm.
was the day when the collective sins, even the intentional sins of all of Israel, were atoned for and covered through that day, and that the epicenter of that was the Ark of the Covenant. There's even like this question that the rabbis pose, because Jews pray 3 times a day and they face towards the city of Jerusalem when they pray, just like Daniel prayed 3 times facing the city of Jerusalem. The question is asked, well, what if you're in Jerusalem? Where do you face? And they answer, well, you face towards the temple. What if you're in the temple? Where do you pray? You pray towards the Holy of Holies. What if you're in the Holy of Holies? Where do you pray? You pray facing the Ark of the Covenant. So it's like, since its creation, the Ark of the Covenant has been the epicenter of the people of Israel's very existence. Their spiritual
Hmm.
connection with God. I guess it's like this
Yeah,
portal, back to the presence.
that's a very interesting way to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about this earlier, but practically speaking, like God would use the ark as an indicator of when He wanted the nation to travel and when to stop. And so in the traveling formation in the desert, the book of Numbers tells us that the ark was carried 2,000 cubits ahead of the nation. And this is what I was talking about earlier. There was one midrash, and I just found this so interesting as I was studying,
Mm-hmm.
that said the ark would clear the path for the nation of Israel by burning snakes, scorpions, and thorns with 2 jets of flame that shot from his underside.
That's awesome.
And another midrash says that rather than being carried by its bearers, the ark, in fact, would carry its bearers inches above the ground. So
Wow.
the bearers would just float. Of course, a midrash is basically rabbinic tradition. Is that correct?
Yeah, and much of it's not supposed to be taken like literal. It's a lot of like just kind of I don't know, allegory, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Trying to teach us like a deeper lesson about, but that's kind of the rabbinic way of teaching these deep things, but sometimes they
Yeah.
can be taken literal too. But
Right. Yeah. Just found that funny and interesting at the same time. Yeah.
yeah, that's interesting. It's like that. Remember that old like daytime television commercial that come on in between, like for like Price is Right, and it was like this weed eater thing that you could buy, and it would just like destroy any weeds in your
Oh
yard,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
like it's some kind of brush thing. I can't remember
Yep.
the name of it,
Yep.
but
Yep.
that's
Yep.
what it reminded.
Yeah.
Ah,
That
it's
was
gonna
the
drive me
ark.
crazy.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
I know.
yeah.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. That's funny. So often the Israelites would, when they'd go into war during the conquest of Canaan, the ark would go with them. And there are a lot of different commentators who debate whether or not the presence of the ark was symbolic, that provide motivation for the Jews, or whether or not it was a supernatural, like it actually aided them in the fighting. So
Mm-hmm.
commentators seem to go back and forth debating that, whether or not that was it just a symbol that, hey, God is with us, or whether or not like God actually manifested because of the ark.
Hmm.
They go back and forth on that. um but yeah, spiritually, like we've said, the manifestation of God's presence on earth, the Shekinah. And when God spoke with Moses in the tent of meeting in the desert, he did so from between the two cherubs. And like we've said, it was in the Holy of Holies in the tabernacle on Yom Kippur. The Kohen Gadol, did I say that right? The high priest?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Would go into the Holy of Holies and he would make atonement there on the mercy seat. And there's a lot to deal. There's a lot to deal with when you look at like this word Shekinah, which I don't think Shekinah is actually. Is it in the Bible, that word Shekinah, or is that just a Hebrew word
No,
to try to?
it's not.
Okay.
No. But it comes from the root shakan, which means to dwell.
Okay.
Mhm.
So the presence of God, this Shekinah glory, was seen really through clouds. And so when you start looking at the ark, there's always kind of a mention of clouds. God spoke between the cherubs. There's a glowing cloud visible there. That's Exodus 40. When the Jews traveled, they were led by the ark in a pillar of clouds. That's Numbers 10. At night, that pillar of clouds was replaced by a pillar of fire. That's Exodus 24. I thought this was super interesting. When the high priest entered the presence of the ark on Yom Kippur, he did so only under the cover of a cloud of incense, perhaps intended to mask the sight of the Shekinah in all its glory. So, yeah, so the Shekinah is so powerful, so glorious, so great that he had to go in through a cloud of incense. So I thought that was really interesting. But we also, because we've watched Indiana Jones a lot, we know that the ark is so dangerous for those who come in contact with. So in Indiana Jones, they try to open it, and that guy's face melts off. You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So don't try opening the ark. So we first hear about Nadav and Abihu. Again, that's the Hebrew way. I think the Goy Bible is Nadab and Abihu. So,
Shekinah glory.
The Shekinah glory of Nadab and Abihu. These two sons of Aaron. This is such an interesting story. Leviticus 10. It says they brought a foreign flame, or some translations say strange fire, to offer a sacrifice in the tabernacle, and they're devoured by a fire that emanated from the Lord. What in the world is going on with that story? What is the strange fire they tried to bring in? What does that mean?
There are a lot of different commentary on this, but some people say that they were drunk. Some people said that they were actually fornicating with one another in the presence of God. Some people say that they came in at the wrong time, that it should have been, they try to enter the Holy of Holies at a day that wasn't Yom Kippur. Just no one really knows for sure, but it's like they basically stepped outside the prescribed way of entering God's presence.
And so the Bible calls that strange fire or foreign fire.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah, it is. So that's like one of the things you see about, okay, don't come near the ark if you're not coming in the way that God has told you to come near the ark. And in the book of 1 Samuel, the ark is captured by the Philistines. And everywhere the ark goes, bad things happen to the Philistines. 1 Samuel seems to indicate there was tumors that broke out, but rabbinic tradition says those tumors were actually hemorrhoids. Do you remember this story?
Yes.
Yeah. It's kind of funny. It's placed in the temple of Dagon in Philistia, and the idol of Dagon is found face down with its head cut off. And then the ark is sent back, and some very curious Jews decide they're going to look inside the ark, and 80 of them are struck down by its power. Some translations say it was more than that. And so, there's all of this stuff about, like, man, the ark is the place where the glory of God dwells. And because it is that place, if you go in an unauthorized manner, if you go on your own terms, if there's sin in your heart, there's sin in your life, you're not ritually pure, you will be struck dead. That's how powerful God is, right? So, I mean, a very prominent role in the people of Israel's worship. So what happened to it? Well, let's look at a timeline. We first hear of the ark in the book of Exodus, and the ark travels with the tabernacle. And then after they enter into the land of Canaan, that tabernacle gets set up in Shiloh. That's Joshua 18. And then you get into the book of 1 Samuel, and during the priesthood of Eli, some of Eli's sons, Hophni and Phinehas, they are wicked men. Which, by the way, when my brother and I were being bad, my dad would call us Hophni and Phinehas. So
That's funny.
That's what happens when your dad's in seminary when you're born.
Mm.
So Hophni and Phinehas decide they're going to take the ark into battle as like a good luck charm, as like a lucky rabbit's foot. And they don't win the battle, surprisingly. And the ark gets captured, taken to Philistine territory. Like we said, it does not go well in Philistia for the people who have the ark. They keep sending it from city to city to city to city. Everywhere the ark goes, bad things happen. They put it in the temple of Dagon. Their god's head gets broken off. And so the Philistines say, enough of this. We're going to send it back. So they send it back to Beth Shemesh. That's the place where the people, they want to look inside the ark. They do. 80 of them are struck down. And then the ark gets transported to Kiriath Jearim, and it stays there for 20 years. Are you following me so far?
Yeah.
Okay. So then David ascends to the throne, and David wants to go get the ark. And he goes and gets the ark, and they bring it to Jerusalem. Everybody's super excited. Yeah, he's dancing. I think this is when he's dancing in the linen ephod. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. And there's our old pal Uzzah, which if you and Stacy are looking for a baby name, Uzzah's a good one.
Uzzah, yeah.
What's up, Uzzah? So the ark is about to fall, and Uzzah reaches out to try to steady the ark, and he's instantly struck dead. And so David is deeply, deeply, deeply troubled by this, and he's scared of the ark. So instead of him bringing it to Jerusalem, he decides he's going to leave it in somebody's home, and there's a guy who offers to let the ark stay in his home, and his name is Obed-Edom.
Mm-hmm.
And Obed-Edom, for 3 months, has the ark in his home, and Obed-Edom is like blessed like crazy because of the ark in his home, which is pretty crazy to think about. You have the presence of the God of Israel in your home.
And that's wild.
Yeah. So 3 months later, it's moved to Jerusalem, and then it's placed in Solomon's temple once Solomon builds the temple. So Gabe, then what happens next? Well, how long is it in Solomon's temple before what happens next?
Well, we could do the math. I don't know. That's a good question. When was it moved into? When was it moved into the temple? I know. It was the temple was destroyed in 586 by the Babylonians.
Solomon's temple when it was built.
Yeah. I know the Babylonians came in 586.
Oh, 957. So yeah, it was there for almost 400 years.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Wild. So the temple is there, the ark is there in the temple from 957 to 586. So over 400 years.
Wow.
It's there. And then what happens next?
Oh, the Babylonians come in and they destroy Jerusalem, destroy the temple on the 9th of Av, 586. Yeah, the Babylonians made a list of what they took, but oddly enough, they don't mention the holiest object in all of Israel, the nation that they're conquering. Which leads, this is where we get into speculation world here. Yeah. But according to some, they say Josiah, who was one of the final kings to reign during that first temple period, he knew of the impending invasion of the Babylonians and he hid the ark. Where he hid it is questionable, but some people say that, like one midrash says that he dug a hole under the wood storehouse on the Temple Mount and buried it there. It's not impossible. There's actually really interesting YouTube video by a couple that live in Israel named Sergio and Rhoda, and they actually found a bunch of cool photographs and journals from this British archaeologist that went in and started. He heard that the Temple Mount was being like rebuilt, or some of the renovations were happening below the
Mm-hmm.
Dome of the Rock. And so he went and just started taking photos after photos of photos and all these different renovations before they finished it. And he published all those, and you can look them up. But in under the Dome of the Rock and in the Temple Mount are all kinds of tunnels and wells and cisterns and stuff. So it's not impossible. Caves.
Hmm.
But yeah, check that out. Sergio and Rhoda, they do a whole video on that.
Yeah.
But another account says that Solomon foresaw the eventual destruction of the temple and hid the Ark of the Covenant in a cave near the Dead Sea. Which is, they say, some people say, in which Josiah eventually hid the Ark as well. But
Okay, so he made a cave
yeah,
for the ark because he knew
right,
someday it was gonna, and then Josiah said, "Okay, this is the time he's gonna hide the ark."
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah,
The other theory is that the Babylonians just destroyed it. You know, like gold has a pretty low melting temperature. Maybe
Mhm.
it burned and melted in the fire, and they just cut pieces off of it and took it with them when they looted the temple.
yeah. Hmm. Well, from there, that's when we get into some really, really creative and interesting options. And this is where it gets fun because, the truth is we don't know, right? I mean, the temple's destroyed and the ark is never really mentioned again. We don't really hear of the ark when the exiles come back to the city of Jerusalem, like in Ezra and Nehemiah, right? They rebuild the temple, kind of, but it's not the same, and you don't really hear about the ark. Obviously, in Jesus' day, there's no ark in the Herodian temple and on the Temple Mount. This is the question I've got. If there was no ark during the days of the rebuilt temple during the time of Jesus, where would they take the sacrifices in Yom Kippur?
I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, just I have no idea. That is a really good question.
I've always wondered that because there was the holy place, right? Because we read about that in
yeah.
Luke's gospel. That's where,
Zechariah.
yep, goes into the holy place on the Day of Atonement. But what was in the holy place if the ark wasn't in it?
I don't know. Maybe they just did like a whole dress rehearsal, or maybe it was there, and it was just so under wraps that when they saw that the Romans were going to destroy the temple, maybe they took it back to whatever hiding spot they retrieved it from.
That's an interesting option. Well, then there's the Ethiopian option. So, in a place called Axum, Ethiopia, it is widely believed that the ark is currently being held in the Church of St. Mary of Zion, guarded by a monk who is known as the Keeper of the Ark, who claims to have it in his possession. And so, according to the Christian community there in the city of Axum, the ark was acquired during the reign of Solomon, when Solomon's son Melinich, whose mother was the Queen of Sheba, stole the ark after a visit to Jerusalem. Which that'd be a very interesting item to steal.
Yeah.
I don't know how you'd get away with that. Like, how was you go into the Holy of Holies and swipe it and somehow not get struck dead? And then, so
I don't know.
Yeah. So anyway, that's their theory, because the Queen of Sheba was Ethiopian, and we read in the Bible that she goes to Jerusalem during the glory days of Solomon, and so I guess according to Ethiopian tradition, the Queen of Sheba from Ethiopia and Solomon had a son together, and then he stole the ark. So this Christian group in the not so distant past brought the ark out for Christian holidays, but that has not happened for several years due to the tumultuous political situation in this part of the country. So the tricky part about the Ethiopian option is there's a long history of Ethiopian Christians and monks saying that we have the ark, we have the ark, we have the ark, but we're not going to let you see it because there's only one holy man in this order who can see the ark. And he can't actually see the ark, but he knows where it's at. It's like behind this structure in this room, but it's so holy he can't go in. He can take it out only certain parts of the year, but we've not done that in a long time. But just trust us, we have the ark. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely do you think the Ethiopians have the ark?
I'm going to give it a solid 2 to 3.
Yeah, me too.
If I had to place a bet, yeah.
Me too. And then there is what Gabe was mentioning earlier, the Temple Mount option. So there's an archaeologist named Lynn Rettmeyer who conducted research on the Temple Mount and inside the Dome of the Rock, and he claims to have found the spot on the mount where the Holy of Holies was located during the First Temple period. In the precise center of that spot is a section of bedrock cut out in dimensions that may match those of the Ark as reported in Exodus. And so what Rittmeyer has postulated is that the Ark is still there. It is just buried deep inside the Temple Mount, and an excavation is probably never going to be allowed on the Temple Mount inside the Dome of the Rock, because that is a highly, highly, highly sacred spot for both Muslims and Jews. And so Muslim and Israeli authorities are never going to let that happen. So, it may be sitting right under our very eyes. If you see pictures of Jerusalem and you see the Dome of the Rock, maybe you're looking at the Ark. Who knows? And Gabe, this tends to be like where maybe you lean. Is that where you think maybe the Ark would be?
Yeah, I mean, if I was the high priest and I saw an army, or if I knew that there was a good chance an army would encircle my city, I'd probably go ahead and start constructing a tunnel network beneath that spot and finding ways to conceal that. Yeah, I think that's most likely. But what happened?
Yeah. Okay. So on a scale of 1 to 10, this option is what for you?
An 8 or a 9.
Okay. That's pretty strong.
Yeah.
All right. So we've got the Ethiopian option, we've got the Temple Mount option. Then there is the Egyptian option, or as I like to call, the Dr. Jones option, because this is where Indiana Jones goes looking in Raiders of the Lost Ark in Egypt. And this is from the book of 1 Kings. It says, in the 5th year of King Rehoboam, Shishak, king of Egypt, which if you're looking for another baby name for your your kid, Shishak. Come here, baby.
Shishak. He's in the she shed.
He's in the she shed. I'm Shishak. Shishak, king of Egypt, attacked Jerusalem. This is what the Bible says happened when this king of Egypt attacked Jerusalem. He carried off the treasures of the temple of the Lord and the treasures of the royal palace. He took everything, including all of the gold shield Solomon had made. So that's interesting. So if he took everything, does that mean he also took the ark? And if he would have taken the ark, he would have taken it back to the capital city at the time of Egypt. That would be the city of Tanis. So there you go. That's a possible option, that before the temple was destroyed, when this attack from the king of Egypt happened, as he raided the temple, he took the ark with him. What do you think about that option?
Yeah, not impossible.
Okay. There is so we're doing the scale of 1 to 10. Where does this one fall? The Egyptian options, the Dr. Jones option.
Solid 10. No.
I'd say
6 for me, like a 6 or 7.
Okay. Yep. Okay.
I have no idea though.
Yeah, I think 6 or 7 is probably a pretty reasonable one, because I think that if the ark had really been stolen, there would probably be more of a lament from the people of Israel.
Yeah.
Because when we read in 1 Samuel, the ark was gone. Eli is so upset, he falls off his chair and dies, right?
Right.
So I think there'd probably be more of a mention that the ark is taken. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. So there's the Mount Nebo option, which is that the prophet Jeremiah hid the ark in a cave on Mount Nebo. 2 Maccabees 2, verses 4 through 10 seems to allude to this. So the prophet Jeremiah is the weeping prophet who is warning the people of Israel that the city of Jerusalem is about to be destroyed. And so maybe he knows destruction is imminent. Maybe he also knows that there is a previous prophecy Solomon made that someday the temple's going to get destroyed and the ark's going to go away, and he knows there's a cave, and so he takes the ark and he hides it in that cave on Mount Nebo, and it may still be there and we don't know where it is. It's a cave in Mount Nebo. So there's an option there.
Yeah.
So your scale gives that a what? 1 to 10?
I'd say 6 or 7 as well.
Okay.
It's pretty viable.
Yeah, that's a viable option.
I'm not opposed to that.
And then there's one where the ark was taken up to heaven. It just got taken right up.
Got raptured.
Just got raptured.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and say that, well, I'll tell you why people say that it was taken up to heaven, and I'll tell you what I think about it. So in Revelation chapter 11, John sees the ark. So we mentioned this the last episode. He sees the ark, and he sees the ark at the sounding of the 7th trumpet. And that's a significant milestone in the book of Revelation, because the 7th trumpet is like the last one. All of the final events leading up to the return of Jesus, the establishment of the earthly kingdom. It's not really a single event. There's like the final fury of God's judgments, the final harvest of judgment, the Lamb defeating the kings of the earth, the battle of Armageddon. All of that is inaugurated at the sounding of the last trumpet. And so the trumpet sounds, and John sees the Holy of Holies open up in heaven. And what does he see inside the Holy of Holies? He sees the ark. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So as far as I know, and Gabe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, or somebody can send me an email if I'm wrong, outside of the book of Hebrews, it's the only mention of the ark in the New Testament, I believe.
Yeah, you might be right.
So you can send me an email if I'm wrong, if you find a verse where it's at. And so he sees the ark, and it's this picture of the communion of God with humanity. So it's a place of blood sacrifices, God's communication with humanity. There's the tablets. This is where the priest would meet with God, God's provision for humanity, the place where the manna is there, God's willingness to fight for humanity. There's Aaron's staff. And so what was significant about John seeing that is people of Israel probably thought, like, you know, we sinned and rebelled against God. Our temple got destroyed. Like, I guess God's just done with us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the ark. And John sees it. But we got to understand what John is seeing is a prophetic apocalyptic vision, right? And really, I don't know if we could say that the ark is literally there in heaven, because the ark isn't needed anymore in heaven, because that is the place of God's dwelling. So really what John sees when he sees the ark is a symbol that everything that was lost in the fall is going to be restored and remade. So I don't think the ark got raptured and is up in heaven. That's just me. What do you think?
Yeah, I think he's talking symbolically there.
Yeah. So of all of those theories, I think the one that I find most plausible is really two. Probably the most plausible is that it was destroyed by the Babylonians and just melted down. And then the second option is maybe it's on the Temple Mount. Maybe it's like at the Dome of the Rock. That'd be option 2 for me.
Yeah.
How about you? You're.
Yeah. I think I'm either it's in the Temple Mount somewhere. I've been in these like tunnels and stuff that go around the outskirts of the Temple Mount. There is a vast network of tunnels that go around and through the Temple Mount. Mm-hmm. But I think it's there, or those tunnels were used to evacuate and hide the ark elsewhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about like it got destroyed? Do you feel like that's a?
I actually think that's less likely, because this is the holiest object in all of Israeli religion, and I feel like that would have been cared for more so than just let the Babylonians just come in and burn it down.
So maybe it would have been made into a bigger deal in the scriptures if it had been. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it would have been somewhere in archaeological or like historical evidence somewhere of it being destroyed.
Yeah. So As we land the plane, will we ever see the Ark again? Dun, dun, dun.
Mm.
So 2 Kings 24 says, Nebuchadnezzar carried off all the treasures of the house of the Lord and the treasures of the king's house, and cut in pieces all the vessels of gold in the temple of the Lord, which Solomon king of Israel had made, as the Lord had foretold. So destruction of the temple, destruction of the holy things. But then, Gabe, you mentioned the scripture in the last episode, Jeremiah 3.
Mm-hmm.
You want to read that for us and maybe talk about what that means?
Yeah, I mentioned it because people come to me sometimes and ask me about, and I just remind them of this passage, Jeremiah 3:16 and 17. And when you have multiplied and been fruitful in the land in those days, declares the Lord, they shall no more say, the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord. Meaning like they should no longer be obsessed with it or worry about it. It shall not come to mind or be remembered or missed. It shall not be made again. At that time, Jerusalem shall be called the throne of the Lord, and all the nations shall gather to it and to the presence of the Lord in Jerusalem.
So here's an interesting thought.
Mm-hmm.
If Jeremiah is saying that in Jeremiah 3, it shall not come to mind or be remembered or missed, was the ark already gone when Jeremiah was saying that?
That is a good question because Jeremiah is prophesying before the Babylonian conquest, right?
I think so. Huh.
That or
it's a prophecy, maybe.
Because he's speaking prophetically, knowing that it will be lost.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought.
Mm-hmm.
So our old friend, Dr. Michael Heiser, rest in peace, Dr. Heiser, that we love around here. He wrote a book called I Dare You Not to Bore Me with the Bible. And here's what he says about that passage, Jeremiah 3:16. He says, the passage plainly shows the ark would be absent because of the exile. Jeremiah 3:16 also insists that it shall not be made again, wording that strongly suggests the ark would be destroyed in the impending disaster. If the ark weren't destined for destruction, talk of rebuilding it would make no sense at all. Jeremiah 3:17 reinforces this point. The ark was God's throne. He sat between the cherubim of the lid known as the mercy seat. But the passage speaks of a day when Jerusalem itself would be God's throne. We read about this in Revelation 21:2-3. I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, behold, the dwelling place of God is with man. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them as their God. A recovered Ark of the Covenant doesn't fit this picture. It would be a disappointment. So well said, Dr. Heiser. So essentially,
just like if you clicked on this podcast to play it thinking we were actually going to tell you where the Ark of the Covenant was,
it's kind of a disappointment. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So basically, Dr. Heiser says that passage in Jeremiah 3 says, no, it got destroyed right before the exile, and it's never going to be rebuilt again because we don't need it, because the promise of the restored kingdom is that the dwelling place of God is with man, not in a chest between two cherub. It's with us, that we will be the temple of God. And so, yeah.
So
go ahead.
So it's almost like the Ark of the Covenant was just a placeholder in a way until the real thing came.
Is there a way in which we could understand, and maybe this is a stretch, but go with me, like the New Testament says our bodies are a temple of the Holy Spirit. And so if the ark was the place where the glory of God dwelt, and everywhere the ark went, the atmosphere was changed, is a picture of how we are to live our lives as sacred and set apart and holy as believers.
Perhaps an influence.
Yeah.
Influence the atmosphere around us, perhaps. That'll preach.
That'll preach. I'm going to throw out my sermon for Sunday and write a new one based on that. So.
Yeah. Do it.
Yeah. So interesting topic nonetheless, but I think at the end of the day, we know enough from the scriptures to know that while it is very fascinating and interesting to, research the history and the theology of it, at the end of the day, we have something far better than the ark in the new covenant through Christ. And that the dwelling place of God is with man in the New Jerusalem. And so we're not going to need in Ark. And so, yeah, that's really good news. So
You mean I should not continue watching inordinate amounts of time, like YouTube videos and Bible studies on where the Ark of the Covenant can
I
be found?
mean, as long as you send them all to your pastor in all caps in an email.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, definitely all caps.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't read if it was just a normal
No.
like normal punctuation, but if it's all caps, I always read all caps.
If it's all caps and then before it you say something about you being the Lord's messenger, I'm going to read that email.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it always helps that if the thumbnail of the YouTube video, it always helps if there's a really, really poorly done Photoshop on that thumbnail.
Yes.
That you can tell it's like, especially if there's like a lion wearing a tallit or something and a fireball coming out of this corner of the screen. And it says something about like, don't wait, the time is near, all caps. I would definitely watch that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. No,
that's
100%.
very legitimate.
100%. If you find those videos,
man,
send them to your pastor. If you're not watching on YouTube, you see me shaking my head as I said that. So, man,
gosh,
that's good stuff.
We're jerks.
Yeah, we are, but we've been doing this for a while, so we know how it works.
Mm.
Well, thank you guys for listening, and thank you for whoever asked us this question. The last episode, this opened up a whole really interesting topic to dive into and study. So thank you for that. As always, we love your questions. So if you got any more related to this topic of study, be it the tabernacle or the Ark or anything like that, man, send them away. We would love to hear them and take a crack at answering them. So indeed. Thank you guys again for listening, and we will see you guys next time.